I mean, I never understood how the Italians like exist as a culture because not only do they have like that insanely hot weather where yeah it's like I mean it probably wasn't 2000 years ago 40 degrees in the summer. It was probably like 35 or something, which is still moderately unbearable, and they didn't wear many clothes according to all of the cool paintings and mosaics we have. They just wore like bed sheets and stuff. But even still, like, I don't know how the Italian culture evolved as it got hotter and hotter. Man, what they eat in that heat is crazy.
It's not even that. Like I walk around here and I see these guys, they're Italian men, businessmen, and they're like
Yeah.
in two-piece suits, dress shirt,
Yeah.
tie, buttoned all the way up, walking around. They're standing in the sun, drinking an espresso, wearing sunglasses, and not a drip of sweat. You don't see any, they're not sweating, they're not struggling. None of it makes sense. I've been trying to put the math together. It's just I don't get it. I don't get it.
They hide the sweat. They hide the sweat. Like they've like evolved to the point where they don't have to have any sweat that's visible.
It's
But
evolution.
under that two-piece suit, it's just swamp ass. Just
It's
absolute swamp
they're,
ass.
they're wearing still suits underneath the suits. Gotta reclaim that water, baby. Gotta reclaim that water.
That's exactly it. That's
Just
exactly
like
it.
they open their shirt and it's just like neoprene.
And at the end of the day, they wring it off, and that's what they have the salted pasta water for, you know?
Oh no! I don't want faster ever again.
How do you think Nona makes it taste so good?
Oh. Yeah. I think my favorite thing about overheating in places is the UK only started regulating places being too hot last year.
What do you mean, like
How do you regulate
regulating?
it?
So like in our we have building regulations that like our buildings have to like comply with sort of thing in order to like
Mm.
for us to construct them. We have overheating regulations now. Essentially, the easiest way to comply with it is reducing the amount of glazing in a property, essentially.
Huh.
Mm.
But we've only just started thinking about it, and it's just like we've had this like heat wave crisis in the UK for the last like 15 years. Why have we
Yeah.
taken this long to be like, guys? We might need to like stop our houses being insanely hot in the summer.
Yeah, don't you guys have AC?
Nope.
Yeah, I mean we don't either. Actually, I don't even think the Italians have AC. I think we all just have windows.
Yeah, I don't think anywhere in Europe has AC.
No. And so every year, 15,000 people just die from heat all across the continent and
Literally, yeah.
extended land masses.
It's a fucking issue in the UK. It's just like, maybe we should start thinking about that. Maybe. It's like, this just should have been a thing like years ago.
Yeah. Speaking of the UK, you mentioned it earlier, and actually, I didn't know what you meant earlier, but almost like 5 minutes after you mentioned it,
Uh-huh.
I was on Blue Sky, just like scrolling, waiting for us to get started, and then like out of nowhere, I just saw like a dozen posts about this thing that you were talking about. Like I did
Yeah.
not hear about this before you were talking about it.
Yeah, so a few days ago, there was a stabbing that happened in Stockport, which is down south somewhere, where I believe 6 young girls were targeted and stabbed and killed. And it turns out the guy is Welsh, so not an immigrant.
Oh,
However, he is black, but he's also 17 years old. So when the crime was originally committed and they caught him, his information was not released to the public because he was a minor, which then meant you had shits like Andrew Tate come out online saying he's an immigrant, he's just killed 6 young girls, this shit can't stand. So,
I thought Andrew Tate was in jail.
no, not anymore.
Oh, okay, so
He's-
he's tweeting again.
I think
That's good.
he's tweeting again, yeah. But we also have other far-right people in the UK who jumped on the bandwagon, and that the next day there was riots in Stockport, like far-right riots in Stockport. So while there were women trying to grieve the loss of life of 6 young girls, At the same time, there was a bunch of white, absolute, actual assholes actually rioting. And the police, because obviously they're far right, weren't really doing anything. They were just kind of like trying to hold their ground as like rocks and bins get thrown at them, essentially, rather than actually trying to disperse it. So that happened the night after. Since then, across the country, there has been riots pretty much in almost every city in the UK.
Where is this coming from? This is so like, just this one incident caused all of this? Like,
so the far right's obviously been growing in the UK quite a bit. In the recent general election, Reform, who's the far right party in the UK, got third place in the total number of votes, sort of thing. So it's been a growing phenomenon in the UK for a while now. And then with this stabbing, with the misinformation that was allowed to propagate because the actual culprit wasn't announced because he was a minor, it just allowed this misinformation to spread because no one could counter it, because we genuinely didn't know. And then when it was released that it was actually someone that was black, even the fact that they're not an immigrant didn't matter anymore. They were still a black kid.
Right.
So mosques are being targeted, Asian communities are being targeted. Literally anyone that any white asshole can blame as being a foreigner is being targeted, and it's happening across the entirety of the UK. It is horrific, it is disgusting, but yeah, it's kind of just blown up, and it blew up so
overnight.
Pretty much, yeah. And the formal organizing has happened in like Telegram chats and stuff like that. So when it kicks off, it's not like the left have been able to like organize a counter protest alongside it, sort of thing, because we don't know when they're happening. They are just essentially people are. We have a decent idea, so Hope Not Hate has managed to infiltrate some of these organizations to get dates and times, but there is others that have sprung up that we did not know about, and essentially, but because we don't know about them fully, we're not able to counter them. So I believe one happened a few hours ago close to where I'm from in Middlesbrough, where 1,000 far-right Nazis were storming through the city, and they were, with the recent migration crisis happening in the UK, not a crisis because migrants are coming, but because the Tories just weren't dealing with asylum seekers. They were just putting them in hotels, just trying to wait till they could send them to Rwanda, sort of thing. Because of that, all the far-right people are attacking hotels. So hotels are being broken into.
Hotels.
Yep, because foreigners are being kept there as asylum seekers. So they're breaking into hotels and setting hotels on fire. They attacked an advice centre, which typically helps with immigration, which just happened to be next to a police station. So they set the advice centre on fire, which then obviously caught the police station on fire because they're slap bang next to each other, sort of thing, which obviously has caused a lot of people to then report far-right people are protesting and setting police stations on fire, and fuck all's being done about it, essentially. And it's racism and it's Islamophobia that's causing all of this. And then Keir Starmer, our new Prime Minister, came out saying, obviously, that these far-right protests are deplorable, they need to stop, yada yada, but has not once said that it's Islamophobia, and not once have said it's racist. And they're trying to now enact harsher rules against protests in order to stop these things from happening, including stuff like facial recognition, which it only is going to be inevitably then used on us when we then protest.
Well, that's pretty common, right? Is like you always have this one, like, incident that happens, which is an excuse to push away civil liberties further, even if that incident is a totally like weird Black Swan style incident. Like, I mean, like 9/11 was a great case for this. Like, and that's like a bit hyperbolic to relate the two, but I mean, every time there's a crisis, they use it as an excuse to encroach on civil liberties, and I mean, facial recognition technology is something that was, again, pioneered on the military fronts, especially against Palestinians. And a lot of it is pioneered by Israeli companies.
And it's also incredibly racialized to the point where black women are misidentified 20 to 30% of the time. So, like, obviously there's not going to be really that many black women on a far-right protest here in the UK, but when a pro-Palestinian march happens and they decide to turn on facial recognition, you're going to get quite a lot of black women who are suddenly going to be misidentified. And that's going to cause a whole fucking issue. But yeah, it's just, it's a horrific
You got
thing.
way too many crazy people for such a small island.
Yeah.
Way too many crazy people.
But yeah.
Shit.
So
Stay safe.
Municipalities, are they getting things under control at this point, or are they still struggling with the riots and protests?
They're doing what they can, essentially, because sometimes they are popping up without them knowing they're about to happen. But because of stuff like Hope Not Hate and obviously their own internal help and like infiltrating of these groups, they're slowly able to figure out what's happening and where stuff's going to kick off. So they're able to reduce the damages that they're able to do because they're able to at least like get riot police to be there from the beginning, rather than waiting till like 2 hours in when shit's already starting to kick off and then being like, fuck, send in the riot police sort of deal.
Yeah.
They're at least able to send it in from the get-go. But they're still not really doing much. So the one in Middlesbrough today started at 1 p.m. By 3 p.m., the protesters had managed to escape from the police. So they then started causing havoc because the police were trying to hem in the majority of the people into the protests that they were meant to be having, sort of thing. But there was some who were able to escape from said protests and start causing havoc. But because they were already trying to localize this protest to a specific location, they couldn't then go out and deal with these people who were causing havoc elsewhere.
Right.
But we're at least seeing a lot of people. So they tried to have a protest yesterday in Manchester, but because we knew about it, we were able to produce a counter-left protest, which was far bigger than theirs. So we are slowly being able to handle the situation. It's just because it's such a weird situation that did seemingly come out of absolutely nowhere. It is just so difficult to try and deal with it.
It's a bit of a wildfire.
And it's just because of, like, since fucking 2001, it's been pretty easy and pretty simple to shit on Islam just for any old woes. And it's literally just the blowback of all that stuff finally coming back to the UK. Like, we've had certain instances, but, like, this is I think the biggest issue we've had with Islam.
It's been like a growing thing over the past, even before 2001, over like 50 years.
Yeah.
Of fucking around in Middle Eastern countries. I mean, shit. You could, I don't know. History is. I don't want to make a Kamala meme anymore, but context, blah blah blah. Like history is a bitch. And
we've not made many Kamala memes yet. That's a new thing for us.
I'm so tired of the Kamala memes already because she's like not in any way different than Joe Biden. She's just like prettier.
She's younger, so she's not going to die of dementia in 2 years.
Yeah, but she still makes no sense when she talks. She just goes on about like coconuts and shit. Like, what is that for? But I think the West has been just craving Islamophobia for a long time. And there's finally more and more like political justification for the right to embrace it, because I don't know, maybe the West like somehow deep down never actually got over the Ottoman Empire and the British attempt to like carve everything up to prevent a pan-Arabic movement, because like heaven forbid you have a pan-Arabic movement that threatens Western countries.
We can't have the British Empire not be the biggest empire. It needs to. The Ottoman Empire can only be second place. I'm sorry, it can't be any bigger.
Well, okay, the American Empire is bigger than the British Empire ever was,
but
so I don't want to hear about
people
that.
Barely talk. People don't count the American Empire as an empire.
Yeah, we're better at press than you guys are.
Yeah, you kept it secret. We were just openly an empire.
Yeah, that's true.
Mr. Pop.
The idea that spaces are literally for everybody and that you can share something with anybody indiscriminately is false.
That was loud.
Did we do it right? It was 3, 2, 1, then clap.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you want to do it again?
It'll work out.
It'll be fine either way.
I mean, it's just gonna be like half a second off, so I just like shifted or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like okay.
Right.
But yeah, so we're gathered all here today. We'll do a short round of introductions. It's myself, Zach, welcoming you to the 5th episode of Architov. Callum is joining us today, and we have
back, baby.
We have a new member today, Swan from the server. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself also with just as that, or we didn't actually talk how you wanted to be introduced.
We probably talked about this earlier.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, that works. No, Swan works. Swan. My name's Sean. Real legal name Sean, but Swan kind of a nickname. Sean Morjano, from the States, originally from New York.
God, we keep having States people on this podcast.
Yeah,
we just like talking shit.
Yeah. Americans like to talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, from New York, born and raised, moved to Seattle, kind of in my mid-20s, moved to Seattle, lived there for about 8 years, and now I currently live in Rome, where I am pursuing a master's in architecture and urban regeneration.
So another American expat.
Yeah.
Getting out of the mother country.
Dude, I'm considering leaving as well, so don't worry.
Good riddance.
Come to you can
Vienna
do like a
is
reverse
like my
Brexit.
choice of country in Europe as well.
Yeah. Come to Europe. You can do a reverse Brexit.
I would. My only issue is I'm so close to being licensed, I may as well get licensed now, sort of deal. But then they stopped doing the transfer of licenses from the UK to Europe, so I'll have to get re-licensed again in Europe. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
But our licenses aren't that bad. It's not like the 7 exams in the US or something like this. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not as traumatizing.
That's fine. We'll see. I've got another couple of years before I need to make that decision.
But let's get to our topic, our new trauma, or our maybe familiar trauma to all of us, and that is the wonderful, glorious company of Autodesk.
Oh, I
and
fucking hate them.
the beautiful suite of softwares that they've foisted upon us that we all have to deal with now. Based upon my article from a few weeks ago.
A most successful article to date. Congratulations.
Thank you. I think everybody likes to hate Autodesk.
It's not surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, they suck. But I was also inspired like very heavily by Ed Zitron, and I don't know if we can link to him, but I don't know if there's a reason. He went from a podcaster nobody to a podcaster heavyweight in like 3 months, because he hit a chord, and that chord was, what so many software companies have done to ruin our digital environments on this like notion of growth at all costs, despite the needs and health and well-being of customers. This applies to Facebook not doing anything about pedophilia, for instance, because it ruins interactions if you get rid of the pedophiles. This applies to Google incorporating AI and advertising at the top of searching, because that's more profitable than actual organic interaction on the search engine. It also applies to just garbage you see happening on Twitter and many other digital spaces, and Autodesk is not immune from this. We've all kind of had to deal with their garbage. So I don't know, let's open up by just talking about how we've all had lovely experiences with this company and their products.
Yeah, so
Feel free to vent.
I've been using AutoCAD now for 7 years. It's a fine program. It's expensive for what it is, but it does its job. The hatch tool is the worst fucking tool in existence.
Never improved.
Never been improved. It's constantly shit. But there's always new updates, which I never seem to understand what they're doing, but they're doing something, I guess. Maybe, probably not.
It costs 13 gigabytes of disk space to put a new number on the software.
Yeah.
2024.
Yep. So I'm fine with most of Autodesk stuff. Most of AutoCAD stuff, other than the hatch tool. It's Revit that I really fucking hate and despise.
Yeah.
I've only started using Revit this year, so I've been using it for about a year now. Just started at my new company, started using Revit. The first job they put me on was fixing a model. I then spent 3 months trying to fix the model to the point where we abandoned the model and exported all of the sheets into AutoCAD because it was that bad. So we just left Revit entirely because it was that fucked. So it was like, okay, cool. I then had a part one, like a lower assistant, then work on that project for another 4 months on AutoCAD to try and fix it because it was still fucked.
Yeah.
Like moving a window would take 5 minutes, and then the move might not even be successful, so you'd be forced to cancel the move, in which case you spent 5 minutes waiting for a move that didn't happen. So it was great for a time when I couldn't really be bothered to work, because it meant I didn't really get much work done because I was just waiting 5 minutes for a window to change.
It's a joke on the platform, like when you're using the software, I've got to save the project. I should go get a coffee, go have a cigarette, this kind of thing. You might as well just take a 20-minute break while you're saving, because it's going to take 20 minutes to save.
Yeah.
It's always a roll of the dice whenever you do something in Revit. Like you're blindly throwing a dart, moving this window, hoping that you're not going to get that error window that pops up in the lower right corner, right?
Oh, yeah. Room is not a properly enclosed space or something like this. Why is that an error dialog that I have to click on? Everything I do unencloses the room because I'm moving walls. Why do I have to click on something after that? I know. Yeah. Or the worst thing is when you go to move a window, and because it's constrained, it moves in the other direction. Or a wall or something like this.
Constraints
now
are
we're
my
just gonna
favorite thing, because people will accidentally lock stuff and not realize they've locked stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're like using the align tool with the auto lock feature on it, so they're just moving stuff around with the align tool all innocently, and then I come into the project and it's like, I want to move this wall to the right like a meter, and then suddenly like all the windows of the entire building just moved a meter to the right. It's like, why are these attached to this wall? It makes no logical sense.
Like the best way I put it for people is like you're drawing with 10 thumbs and you only have a crayon, but you're doing it while you're wearing a straitjacket. Like that's what Revit feels like as a software from a user experience. Let alone if we just forget the interface for a second and forget like these little errors that pop up, it's just like doing something in this software, whether it's trying to make something appear because it disappeared, or trying to just like build a wall or move a window. It just feels like you have to jump through hoops. Like no software should make you feel like you have to bend over backwards, and it's like a parkour exercise where you're jumping from roof to roof just to move a window. It's like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's the most cumbersome thing that you could ever imagine. And so I was out of Revit for 4 or 5 years.
Oh no.
And now at my new job, we're doing BIM. It's the first BIM project for the office. For those who don't know, I'm at Coop Himmelblau. And
Fancy.
Coop Himmel, it's really cool. But Coop Himmelblau is getting into BIM. Because on this particular project we have, which is one of the largest projects it's the largest project the company has ever had. It's 3 million square meters. It's an airport. It's in Revit.
Ooh, fun.
And it's demanded that this whole project be done in Revit. So the whole thing is broken into like 60 different files that all have to connect to each other.
Oh yeah, I forgot about having to deal with shit like this. Having to
Yeah,
link
it's all-
different
Linking one
Revit
into
files
another,
into
yeah.
the main file because the main file's too big
Oh, yeah.
for it to function
Oh,
as an
yeah.
actual file.
Exactly. Everything is broken into sectors that, I don't know, each sector is about 500 meters long.
Jeez.
And then each sector has its own skin file, for the building exterior. And who knows how this is going to get broken up further. Underground is separate from above ground. It's absolutely insane. And so every time, yes, exactly. This is only concept design. Every time that you want to change something, you want to move a wall or something, there's 13 dialogues that pop up that tell you something is broken. You have to wait for like 5 seconds just to see the response of what you did. It is the most like taxing process. Obviously, Revit is not a design tool, but it's certainly not a production tool either, because what the fuck? You can't produce.
It's a fucking nightmare, man. Oh,
Yeah.
I hate that. Like coming from uni where there's an established time of like you're gonna have a few weeks to like come up with a concept, and then you'll be a mass stuff, and slowly get to that, and then you get to like at practice, and it's just like cool. So I don't give a shit about any of your massing. I want you to start designing tomorrow, and it's like, hang on a second, what? Revit doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, it's like a fundamentally flawed software for architecture, I think, and I don't think it was made by architects, honestly.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it, right? It feels like it was made by, I don't know, software people or engineers or something.
It's 100% like software people and maybe like construction managers.
Yeah, I mean, like I talked about in the article, it was published by Revit Technology or Charles River Software as Revit, which stood for revise instantly, because you could change something in a model and it would change in a drawing.
Which is the only thing that Revit's good for. Like, it is, to be
Yeah.
fair, a really nice feature. The amount of time I've spent on AutoCAD
is.
moving a window on 7 different elevations.
That's true. Okay, that's true.
It
The
is
fact
a
that
nice
it's all
feature,
synchronized
but it's
is
the
good.
only good feature.
And schedules. I will say schedules
Schedules
is
as
something
well, yeah.
that it's awesome at.
Schedules is
Like,
great.
it makes things super easy, like the tons of filters that you can put on, but I there's so many more cons to this software that like the pros
Yeah.
are so far from outweighing
Like, they
any
are
of
the
that
two
stuff.
pros.
Yeah, like
But I'm even so like black pilled on the software right now, even though I use it on a day-to-day basis. Like, I even see these two minimal pros as cons as well. Because in terms of schedules, like, we used to be able to lie as architects.
Oh, I do that.
No,
I still do that. I still lie.
Now we can't lie. Like, that's really bad, actually.
Because our clients don't want Revit files from us. They just want PDFs. So I just
Yeah.
change the text on
Or
stuff.
you just Photoshop it.
It just 100% just change the text on stuff, and it's
Yeah,
like
fuck it.
it's to scale. So if you measured it, it's going to be fucking wrong. But don't measure
Yeah.
it. Just use the dimension that states the measurement. It saves my life so much more.
Yeah, I sound like an old man yelling at clouds right now. But if you look at any document package from like the 1960s, where they did stuff by hand, imagine doing stuff by hand. The sections don't match the plans. It's way off. But it was fine. They still built the shit. Because they were talking with, they still figured it out. And it's because the architect was in constant communication with the people that were actually building it, that they could solve these things in the field. Because the document was just representing the intent of the design, not the millimeter of the design.
Yeah,
You know?
I want to bring up something Colin just said, because in your piece you wrote, the draftsperson fully today a job of the past, a job eliminated by the BIM transition and substituted for the BIM technician, whose job is to model in 3 dimensions at a higher level of rigor than a draftsperson ever had to consider. And
Yeah.
I think what's so bizarre is that we still have the same outcome today as of August 4th, 2024, as we did in the last 1,000 years, where there had to be drawings. Like, a set of drawings is still the end goal. So hold on.
Yeah.
You're telling me that now I gotta make sure all of these walls reach a very specific height in the 3D model so that they don't interfere with the column or a beam or any of this stuff, just to still send you a PDF in an email? Like, that's our end goal? Like, all of this shit and
Yeah.
our end goal is still the same? Like, something's off.
Yeah, I think.
But this is no, go ahead.
I think one of the things that would technically sort of be helpful for is you do a 3D model at the same time you're producing the drawing, sort of thing. So you could argue you could do like renders and visuals and stuff from this software at the same time. But I found at university the easiest and best way to do this is to produce plans and sections and elevations in CAD, and then to pick and choose purposely where you want to take renders from on those plans, and then create them in a different 3D software where you're only creating the shit you can see.
Right.
Why am I having to create a whole fucking building in a 3D model when I'm not seeing, like, I'm only seeing a 45 angle, like, lens of where the fucking building. I'm not seeing everything else that's behind it. Why have I got to model all that shit?
There's a two-sided thing to this. I mean, like, yeah, you're right. Like, in terms of architecture, why do you have to show so much, essentially, in 3D when you could just draft it out in the plans? But, like, this leads me to the second thing that we said was a potential benefit of this BIM software, and that's that you can create a 3D model and then automatically generate drawings. But as we know, for anything that's automated, it's not as automated as it seems. And I think people are forgetting how to do good drawings. Like, and it's not just that, like, I think we know in the backs of our heads, like those of us that have put together drawing sets before, you know how to make it look good. You know how not to have dimensions overlapping tags, or how to do your annotations in such a way where they're quickly legible, how to do your line weights, like so on and so forth. But you don't have time to think about it because you spend so much time doing things that are not represented in those drawings to get a BIM model up to the level of efficacy and detail that's demanded by your clients. And then they go ship that BIM model off to consultants, for instance. And one of the reasons they want everything in 3D is because the MEP guys take this shit and they run calculations with it. Or the structural guys, or they'll already send it off to cost consultants, which is crazy that it happens so early in a project, that a cost consultant is getting authored BIM data and figuring out how much the studs are going to cost, as if this building, regardless of this factor, is not going to expand by 50% in cost between phases, like any building does. So even the positives of BIM software are even like detractors in terms of what we're looking for in architectural practice. They waste our time.
I
think for me...
No, go ahead.
Do you wanna go? I think for me, one of the best things I think my university ever did was refuse to teach us Revit. They just refused. They taught us AutoCAD and they taught us SketchUp. And they did a little bit of work, like, when I mean a little bit, I mean like an hour session on Grasshopper, and that was it. But it was primarily like, here's SketchUp, you do your 3D stuff here, and then you can do your drawings on CAD. That's it. That's all you're ever going to need. You shouldn't need anything else. And if you need more, that's an issue, sort of deal. It wasn't until I actually got this new job that I had to learn Revit, and it's purely because they're using Revit. I could do everything that they're wanting me to do in CAD, probably faster in CAD than I can do it in Revit, but everything's in Revit now. so I just have to use it sort of a deal. But I saw it happen with, in my second year in my undergrad, we had 3 of my mates went from a school in the UK to a Polish university to study architecture for a year there instead. They went from, what we were doing was just essentially doing, at that year we had 4 design projects, and that's all we were doing, and 1 written piece. We weren't really having design classes. We were just doing studio times sort of stuff with our lecturers and professors and going through stuff and doing crits. They were having full fine art drawing lessons, painting studies, like live painting stuff. And they came back, and in third year, they were some of the best students that we had in our third year, like hands down. And it was like unequivocally because they went to go study in Poland, and because they did all of this extra shit that we weren't doing, because the industry didn't seem to feel like it needed to teach all this stuff. But
Poland is better than everywhere.
Some stuff I wouldn't be fully sure about, but at least in terms of architecture school to my architecture school, I would 100% agree. And I am very thankful that my university refused to teach Revit until like later down the line, because it defines how you can design.
Exactly. It constrains you.
I think the software is actually having a larger impact on the profession more than we think, because it's there's the errors that show up in the lower right corner, those fucking errors. But if we zoom out a little bit, now we're looking at, okay, well, I just get out of college and I know this software, but I don't know this software, right? And everywhere you look, it's just like, you gotta know Revit. You gotta know Revit for the most part.
Right.
So now this software needs to be taught in school, so that kids, when they get out of school, they at least have a fighting chance. So it's like it's almost like they get you right when they're right, even before you step into an architecture studio or an art office. Like, you got to know this stuff. They really have us handcuffed.
It's a self-reinforcing loop. And actually, this was on the docket for earlier, and I just want to, just because we're already on the topic, I just want to read a paragraph that was exactly about this, and like BIM's relationship to education. From the article, many schools engage with the technical particulars of building construction during the design process, instead of focusing on the complex phenomena and theory of design. As such, many of these schools teach BIM as part of their core curriculum, which I would argue is a clever way for the companies that produce this software to grow their market share within the industry, and not exactly a good sign of design pedagogy. After all, if there's not an established design pedagogy at a school, where should the school turn to teach their students technical rigor and the tools of industry? The danger of this is that we lose the sight of design theory, which is paramount to the way that we design. The STEMification of architecture sacrifices the aesthetic impulses that make great architecture great, in favor of technically efficient architecture that adds up well in paper or in a BIM model.
And to your point, Revit is not a design tool, so therefore there is no way that it can be an extension of the pedagogy of design and theory that gets pushed on us. It's like you're being taught, French for 4 or 5 years, and then you get out and it's like, oh, well, sorry, we all speak Portuguese or something. And you have to now learn this. Like, it's not an extension. And I think that's where one of the big problems is like, I knew in my undergraduate where like everyone, we would have our pinups, and then there was like those 1 or 2 kids who did their design in Revit. And I think what's funny is that you can tell right off the bat when something is done in Revit. and you could see it in
Right.
the drawings, you see it in the design. So it's like it's actually not responding to our creativity, but our creativity has to respond to the software when
Yeah,
it should be
yeah.
the other way
I
around.
mean, that's the STEMification thing, right? And I think there's a misconception, especially among people who somehow got into architecture because of the technical problems in architecture to solve them, how to put a building together, which is good to know and important to know. And there are vocations for this, but not to be an archy fascist or whatever. But I don't think architecture school is the right place for that kind of thing. Architecture is where you learn how to design, or rather, architecture school is where you learn how to design. And that takes years of work to figure out scale, to figure out flow, to figure out materiality, to figure out phenomena, to figure out like your own style of applying all of these things. And none of that has to do with how much gypsum board is attached to the metal wall studs. That is so outrageously detailed that you're absolutely going to lose sight of the fact that that space needs to be 8 meters tall in order to have the correct phenomenal effect of entering a church or whatever, and then it benefits Autodesk, however, to have this software in the universities. It benefits them because then students learn this, they only know this, and then they take it into the companies, and then the companies are forced to buy these extremely expensive licenses for enterprise editions of this software. It's absolutely a scam in a way, and I think Swan, you're right. It sacrifices design for both efficiency under the and under the thumb of quote unquote efficiency. What we're told is efficiency,
Yeah, exactly.
which is actually not efficient. For something that essentially benefits everyone else but the architect. And at the end of the day, you just end up with these uninteresting and uninspired architecture projects that are design pollution in a way.
I think one thing you mentioned in the article that I don't think you got in the docket is like Revit doesn't have full capabilities. Like it can't do everything. So up until recently, you couldn't do slanted walls, and you still can't do certain stuff. That means the students at university studying and learning might have an interesting idea of, oh, slanted wall here would be cool, but then they can't do it in the program. So they'll abandon that idea and do something else instead. And it slowly hems you into a specific way of, this is how design can look and it can how it can feel. And it's prescribed by the actual program itself, rather than the full entire creativity of the designer, which is a huge issue. And like, I've 100% missed out on jobs because I didn't know Revit up until this year, sort of thing. I mean, I lied on my resume, but like,
as you should.
They can, but they can also kind of tell sometimes.
I don't know Excel.
They can ask but they can ask specific questions about how do you do something on Revit, and because I never used the system, it would be like, I don't know, sort of thing. So they can kind of...
Oh, no, that's where you go, give me 2 seconds, I have to run to the bathroom really quick, and then I'll answer your question. And while you're on the toilet, you just like Google it really fast.
Callum, for what it's worth, I don't think the people who made the software use the software.
they 100%
I don't think so either. They clearly don't. They only make the sample projects in the software, and those sample projects are so easy, you get no errors.
Yeah. But so I've lost jobs because I didn't know Revit, and I've applied for jobs that don't use any Autodesk system, that use like Vectorworks sort of thing, which is a competitor to Autodesk. Thankfully, those jobs understand how much of an issue Autodesk is, to the point where even if I don't have experience, they're like, cool, that's fine. We can help provide you that teaching in the first few weeks of you joining, sort of thing. Like, because they fully understand that Vectorworks is not the primary system that everyone uses. But if I apply to a company that only uses Revit, and I don't know Revit experience, well, fuck me. Like, I can't work there. Like, just instantly, flat out, I'm instantly disqualified from being able to work there, because there's so many other people who can use Revit. And it is 100% the system of, like you said, of getting it into universities early gets students locked to the system, essentially, to the point where when they leave, even if like companies weren't using that system, that student's going to forever remember how that system works and probably most likely have nostalgia to try and get back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the how to use Revit term is so broad. I know we can talk about LOD in a second, but I actually shared in the podcast channel
That
here a screenshot from Boys Firm. They never miss. Shout out Boys Firm. But it's so the caption is the BIM manager watching over my shoulder as I violate every single standard he has established. And I commented on it. I said, that's nothing a little filled region can't fix. And like 40 some odd people liked the comment because like they understand, they relate to that, right? It's
100%.
relatable because it's like, all right, well this column is showing incorrectly. It's not showing how it should be because I didn't draw it. I had to model it, or the computer, the software said it should look like this. So you know what? Now I got to make a white filled region mask to go over it and fix the problem so that it looks right in the drawing, even though it isn't right in the drawing. So it's like this whole idea of how to use Revit is like,
That's why you give the BIM manager a week vacation the week before the deadline. Like, just do that, and because they're gonna have a nervous breakdown if they see the crazy shit you do 3 hours before the submission.
Yeah, right. Because everyone's just like in the visibility graphics template, just like hiding shit. Like that's where you spend most
when I was
of
a
your
BIM
time.
manager. Yeah. I mean, like, you're sitting there. This actually, you're fucking right. It drives me insane, actually, the amount of productivity that is lost in the visibility and graphics override window.
I spent 2 hours on it on Friday.
Right. Yeah.
Because he'd been messing around with floor plans that were showing roofs of like lower levels that I didn't want them to show. So
Classic.
at some point in the past, I had just hidden roofs in the visibility graphics override, and I was so confused when I was on the roof layer of why I was seeing fucking doors beneath the roof. And I was like, what's happening? What have I done? So I spent 2 hours trying to figure out that the roofs were hidden on 100% transparency.
Yeah, we had the same issue with a floor. We had equipment showing up from beneath a floor, and it took us 2 hours of going through this, all the possible, not even in just the main file, but all of the potential linked files that were in this main file. All of the work sets, all of the filters, literally everything you could figure out, just to find out that some lunatic at some point had set the floor to be 60% visibility as an element override. And if I ever find out who that person is, I have weapons.
It's so frustrating.
And it's such a ridiculous waste of time because if this was AutoCAD, or if this was hand drawing, or if this was even Rhino, this is an issue that you could fix with a few mouse clicks that actually doesn't change anything fundamental in the design at all. So it's ridiculous that you have to spend so much time tweaking every little thing like you're flying an airplane is the way I've described Revit in the past. It's just as complicated.
Yeah.
Now, before they had the ribbon system and all of the buttons were all together in one giant panel,
See,
it was
I've
much
only ever
worse,
had the
but-
ribbon system, so that's just it to me.
I could go either way. I wrote about the ribbon system in the article. The ribbon system did add an extra click or two to everything, which makes it so much slower to use the software. But before the ribbon system, all of the buttons were in one big pane on the top. There were like 200 buttons up there, and it looked like 1984 AutoCAD, where it just like buttons everywhere.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But
if you're
once
trying to learn the system, it's like, Jesus Christ, there's like thousands of these.
It's like flying an airplane.
And why would they
just
make
knobs
the
and
shortcuts the
switches.
same as AutoCAD, right? Like the software that
Why
we
is
spent
move
the
a
last,
different
shortcuts,
shortcut?
dude, I don't know. It drives me nuts.
It's the most simple fucking thing in the world. You use it constantly. Why is it different?
Revit should have a command line.
Yes.
Should. I wish
mean,
it did.
It would solve so many issues of the UI system.
Yeah, and I'm really glad we're publishing this episode because we can. If they ever put a command line in Revit, we're gonna go after their asses.
Issue a cease and desist.
Yeah, actually, that's what's gonna happen. Well, look, that's another issue, you know, that I mentioned in the piece is that they haven't fundamentally changed the software in I think 6 or 7 years. I actually found a guy, a really weird Revit nerd, but we're thankful that there's some of these people that exist because he compounded a list, and it's in one of my sources, of every single change in the platform since like 2008. And it's crazy. Like every single major release, minor release, change, he highlighted the major ones, like so on and so forth. And if you scroll through it, in the past few years, almost nothing has changed. Yes, the ability to add slanted walls.
Oh, let's go.
Great. And yet people still pay monthly subscriptions to Autodesk, update their platforms to have buggy new versions, update all, and when you update Revit, you can't just update, you have to update everyone in the company, and you have to update all of the projects that use that platform, which is a nightmare in and of itself.
So you don't have to do all projects. I have 4 different types of Revit. I have
Yeah.
I have 2020,
Yeah.
2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024.
But
Because we
Yeah.
don't upgrade projects. We just don't. So I just have all of the fucking types of Revit that you can possibly get.
It's really bad to upgrade projects, honestly, quite a lot.
Yeah, that's why we just refuse to. So it's like I have 4 different types of Revit on my laptop, and almost all of my laptop storage is just different types of Revit.
Yeah. I mean, you could give me an Autodesk drawing from release 14 and I can open it.
Yep. Yeah.
I used release 14 like before my balls dropped. That's old as shit.
I'm actually looking at the Revit interface right now. I have it open on my screen, and I think
Why are you doing
yes,
that to yourself?
it
Raw
hasn't
dogging
changed.
Revit.
I know, right? And I'm just for the content, but like I'm looking at this, and there's actually no sense of hierarchy to really any of
Right.
these
Oh, yeah.
any of these buttons in this ribbon thing. Like I remember there was
Yeah.
this one issue that I had. So I had the pleasure recently of the studio that I work at. We had gotten a project that was going to be done in Revit. No one knew Revit, so I became the guy that I never wanted to become in an office, was the Revit guy, right? I became that guy. So
Never say you know Revit during an interview. Never say it.
so like
You know, I know, Callum, that you interviewed at places that wanted Revit, but goddamn, that means you're going to have to do Revit.
I'm just going to like put it on my CV that I kind of know it, and if they don't mention it, I'm never bringing it up.
That's fair.
If you don't want to mention it, cool, fine with me. That's fine.
But it's true, because you can very well potentially be placed in that box, and then getting out of that box is far more difficult, right? Like
Yeah.
you just like, oh, they're the Revit, so like we need to keep them on Revit stuff all the time, always. And it's like, I mean, for some people, like I used to work at a firm where we had our BIM leader or BIM coordinator, and she loved it. Like that was one thing that she wanted to do, and that was awesome. So whenever I had gripes, I was able to go to her and get that help. But I think the problem is that there's fundamentally so many gripes to be had with this software. Like if
Yeah.
you make a stairs and you just want to show the direction of the stairs,
Don't even get me
like
started on stairs.
the arrow. So I learned this recently. This is just one of the pick-me-ups. The arrow to actually make that show, it's not even on the side properties. If you like select the stairs, it's not even in the properties of the stairs. There's like a very small button in the ribbon that you have to find that says arrow, like stair direction or stair arrow. And I'm like, why is that a separate button? Why wouldn't that be in the properties of the stair that I'm selecting, that I want to show the direction that it's going in? It's like very, very simple things that should just like
Yeah.
be a no-brainer to make for usability, it's just not there.
But this is why I don't think Revit has ever either the original creators of Revit or Autodesk who bought it and then just did nothing with it and continues to release it. But they've never talked to architects, because stairs are a primary example of this. You can't make it to code stairs in Revit.
Right.
I mean, like, you would think that if they're making architecture software, they should at least read IBC. But it's so easy in Revit to, for instance, make a run of stairs where one run has a completely different riser height than the other run. That's illegal. You can't do that. That's going to get your building shut down. Like,
Yeah. I have a theory for what they're doing instead.
what?
So, a few years ago, I wrote my dissertation for my master's on AI in architecture. This was literally 2 fucking months before Midjourney and shit got released. So, like, literally two months before everyone realized AI pictures were a thing. So there wasn't really that many resources on AI in architecture because there wasn't much happening, except one company who had designed their HQ via AI.
Oh no.
Good old Autodesk.
No.
You're kidding.
Nope, literally. Their entire HQ in Toronto, I believe, is designed via AI.
How
How can you be so
How?
tone deaf?
Yeah. So they would have different parameters of, like, certain teams need to be close to certain other teams, and certain people need to be close to certain teams and stuff like that. And certain people might need enclosed desks, whereas some people might need open space and stuff like this. And they had the building, so they knew the exact, like, floor print of the building. So they then just essentially let an AI run, I think they said 10,000 different iterations for how the building was designed.
Wow.
And then using parameters, they would then judge how well the building was doing. Like, were the people that needed to be closest to each other actually close? Were the people that wanted quiet space actually in quiet spaces? Were people who wanted a lot of direct sunlight directly next to the windows, sort of thing? So they then were able to pick 5 different plans from these, like, 10,000 that they could then hand pick and then tweak themselves in order to actually have a plan, rather than having an architect to design it for them.
So you're telling me the company that makes software for the architecture, engineering, and construction industry did not hire architects?
Yeah. I'm 100% telling you that.
That's insane.
So
You can't write this.
yeah.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
just
peak
fucking
comedy.
And with every tech company doing something with AI now, the one tech company that hasn't came out with a big AI thing is Autodesk.
I was wondering about this.
Neither AutoCAD or Revit has a major AI thing. Sure, Revit has, like, Dynamo, but, like, it's not really like AI. It's
No, that's just Grasshopper
parametric
for
design
Revit.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I 100% think the thing they are currently working on is AI design, which is why AutoCAD and Revit are barely gaining any new improvements, because everyone that would be doing those improvements is working on this new potential AI system.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like in Autodesk's history,
This is full conspiracy on my part, just FYI.
Yeah, no, it's a totally valid conspiracy, because it is very strange they haven't released any AI thing yet. And I don't want to give them the credit for being, smarter than that, because I think
They've proven that they're
they
not.
hate their customers. But, like, Autodesk's business model, like, routinely and time again, is to buy softwares, not improve them, by competing softwares, kill off the weaker ones, and then force people who use those softwares to transition to the other ones that Autodesk has bought. Essentially, Autodesk's market strategy is buy everything, consolidate, buy some more, consolidate, buy some more, and consolidate. It's one of their big 3 business things that they put in their quarterly reports, their big strategies. And nowhere in any of these strategies is it ever actually talked about improving their software. And sure as shit, they have not improved a single piece of software they've ever bought, because they don't make much of their own software. They're like Elon Musk. They just buy things and call it their own.
Their plugins.
3ds Max has not improved. Maya has not improved. Revit has not improved. Autodesk, like we talked about, has not improved.
Yeah.
So just a quick update. I've just went on Autodesk's research website and went on to the particular office building that I'm referring to. So it's called Autodesk Mars Office. In the related resources product, they have 4 articles. One of them is specifically generative design through quality, diversity, data synthesis, and language models.
They're showing Grasshopper screenshots
Yep.
on this page.
So yeah,
So they're getting there. They're getting there.
I think it's because AI in architecture is far vastly more difficult than all of the AI adverts that I'm seeing for architecture propose that it is.
Yeah, it's way more than just autofilling a phrase or, which is ChatGPT, or just generating a picture. There are so many interconnected issues, and not just in terms of design, but multiplied by tenfold when you get into construction realities. So what worries me is that if Autodesk comes out with this, much like when they came out with Revit, or at least took advantage of the financial crisis to push Revit, telling us it's all going to be more efficient, that Autodesk is going to adopt the same line as everybody else who's pushing AI, saying it's being more efficient. Whereas something like 90% of companies that have adopted AI have found out that it's actually less efficient. And we're going to end up with the same burden.
Yep.
That's my concern.
Because I wrote my article on it, and it was before all of the AI craze started happening, a lot of the issues for AI weren't fully known yet. So the fact that, I think it's ChatGPT 5, in order to reach the amount of data for ChatGPT 5 to use, the OpenAI have created a new AI to transcribe books in order to then use books as a resource, because they've run out of literal data on the entirety of the internet.
Yeah, their other option was to use synthetic data, which is to have ChatGPT say things and then feed it to itself.
Yeah.
Like a kind of a human centipede situation.
Which is also literally an issue that is stated in my dissertation of that's not a good thing. Models that are built on other models, in their first couple iterations will be okay, but they'll have so you've got hallucinations in AI where it just makes up shit that wasn't ever meant to be there, but it's just there now, sort of thing. They become more and more prominent as you do further and further iterations on generative AI by using generative AI material. But weird shit starts happening that was never in the original prompt, because there's weird stuff in images and data files and videos that we can't personally see, but a computer can spot that, and it translates it as this is an important piece or something like that, sort of thing, and it starts amplifying essentially what is just a glitch in an image, to the point where the entire image itself is just this glitch. And
well, Nightshade and Glaze take advantage of this. Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Nightshade and Glaze take advantage of this, where if you don't know about Nightshade and Glaze, it's they're two different algorithms that can encode your image with these microscopic kind of pixel-sized imperfections that trick essentially an AI into thinking that a picture of a cow is a picture of a handbag. And it actually poisons the AI.
Yep.
But when this comes to architecture, though, I mean, the efficacy of data is really, really a big concern, because where does this data come from? If you needed all of the text on the whole internet to just train ChatGPT 4, and that's not enough for ChatGPT 5, how many digitized document sets have to be understood by a computer in order for them to reproduce something?
There is someone who has produced an AI model for architecture. It can only produce floor plans. It can't produce anything else, and it can also only do single floor plans. So it can't produce like multi-story buildings.
Well, every American suburban house might as well have been designed by an AI anyways. So.
But the way they were able to do it was there was a court order release of a shit ton of Manhattan apartments. So every single... so they used all of those floor plans to produce this model. And then in doing so, they realized something of this model was only capable of producing these buildings. It couldn't produce anything else. It was like, no matter how different, like, so you could set an outline for how the building would like look as a footprint. No matter how different you made that, even if it was like an amorphous blob, it would still try and make a Manhattan apartment in that.
Which I wouldn't curse anyone to live in a Manhattan apartment. So
yeah. So one of the other things they then did after spotting that was they then went and got a quite large collection of ancient architecture that's obviously public domain, so like a lot of cathedrals, temples, stuff like that, and put those plans into the data model. So they were able to change a Manhattan apartment into a cathedral and vice versa, sort of thing.
None of those things are things I want to live in, though.
Yeah. But it was innately biased to the material it was provided.
Yeah.
Because of how copyright works within architecture, Autodesk does not have the capability of just siphoning off all of the plans.
Imagine the NDAs.
Yeah. It does not have that capability. It's not like we don't publicize like drawings online that people can take from. Like some do get put on like Autodesk and stuff, or like detail inspiration and stuff like that, but very few ever get publicized with what details and sections and plans look like. So Autodesk does not have the resources at all capable of being able to produce an actual generative model.
Consider the problem of typology. Like you mentioned the Manhattan apartment and the church. These are two radically different typologies of architecture. Mm-hmm. And I mean, though you could theoretically live in a church, which I think was the setting of that movie The Crow where that one guy died. And you could theoretically...
For that.
I know. Sucks. And you could theoretically live in a Manhattan apartment, but you shouldn't. If you wanted to instead make a library with this data set, it's impossible because, I mean, plans are plans. There may be even thousands of them that you could get your hand on, but you have 10 for each typology. That's not enough to train a model.
Yep. 100%.
There's no way that's going to work.
My biggest worry with it was, after seeing all of the research that I was able to do before like Midjourney and Share came out, was at least housing in the UK and especially in America as well, it's already copy and paste of, oh, I have this building already designed, so let's paste it multiple different times across this estate. There will be some different buildings within the state, so there might be like 12 different types of houses for like 200 buildings. So you do have some variation, but not much. It's pretty much still copy and pasted across the entire site. Imagine what you could do where a building, where you've got a generative design model that's only trained on UK houses, and it just spits out UK houses. Every single fucking UK house, it already looks similar enough, but they're just going to become the same building. Like, they're not going to change at all, like, because AI can't produce anything new. It can't look at old data and art and be like, I want to change this because of X, Y, and Z sort of thing. It doesn't do that. It just predicts what X is going to look like because Y looks like this.
Yeah, it's a statistics machine.
Yeah. So my biggest worry with this system when I originally started seeing it potentially being a thing was everything was going to start being just more and more carbon copies of something else, and
Right.
less design was going to be commonplace. The more I've learned about not architecture, of AI in the last 2 years since the AI booms happened, is that's not feasible. Like, that reality can't come into existence in the first place. We're fine.
Totally.
sort of
Totally.
thing.
Yeah, but I mean, like in the topic of like BIM and BIM effects on the industry, there's already a similar effect that's happened, and it's not like just reproducing or computers reproducing buildings, but it's because of it's again this promise of efficiency that we were given with the software, that like architects could be more efficient, our profits would go up from projects, but actually the opposite has happened, that now it's so much more work to create a project, a really good project, that we end up losing money on it. The alternative is that, well, yeah, you can just crank out Revit style projects. And I swear to God, if you look back in 50 years and you look at movements of architecture, we're going to be able to very easily post-mortem the period from 2008 onwards, because you'll see a significant uptick in these like Revit style buildings, which is basically a 2-story plan of some kind of civic building or something like this, with a single curtain wall curve in Revit blue glass made of brick, and there's almost no sectional properties besides a double height lobby space. Everything else is entirely generic. And so because Revit has this bizarre approach where you have to focus on details and the big picture at the same time, which is very counterintuitive to design, which is more often from the general to the specific, you end up sacrificing the overall quality of design to just create the project as fast as you can in order to maintain some kind of profitability. And then you just end up with a field of generic shit that could have honestly at the end just been done by the construction management company, because you didn't make any fucking fee off of it anyways.
Right.
You know?
That was a note that I actually wrote at the end of the docket for today, was a world made out of Revit. And
Yeah.
it's funny because like if you look at the skyline of Miami versus the skyline of Vancouver, Canada, they look exactly the same. So it's
Yeah.
funny because they're two polar opposite ends of the continent, right? Like two completely different weather climate situations, right? But the output is still the same as what it's, so it is this copy pasta situation that we're running into, because the 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 design, all of this stuff is getting funneled, siphoned through this one software, and that everyone
Yes.
is using. So when we're all using this one software and we're all trying to make apartments or 5/1s, right? We're running into this like blanded texture. It's like blanded texture where basically everything is the same with very few nuances to actually make it unique. And that's a lot of
Right.
that is driven by the software. Like right now, the software, Revit, is behind the wheel. It's not us anymore, unfortunately. And it's been like that for the last
Yeah.
couple of years. And when you talk about like AI, it's so funny when you're telling me that in the last 20, 30 years of having internet, we ran out of stuff to source from. Just like we ran out we used it all up in a year and a half, which is just mind-boggling to me. But yeah, I think that's my takeaway now, is whether you're in Vancouver, whether you're in Miami, like we as architects, as designers, as people who are very passionate about this whole profession, have to now succumb to Revit taking over and actually saying, well,
Yeah.
this window can't look like this, even though you want it to, because I only have so many parameters and limitations that I can work with within my bounds. So you need to work within my bounds, not I'm going to work, the software, I'm going to work within your bounds. I think that's the
Right.
fundamental issue that we have and why we have blanded texture right now everywhere.
You're 100% correct, and I don't want to fully blame architects for this because it wasn't our fault.
No.
This is very much a cross that's been foisted on our backs, and not just by Autodesk. Like Autodesk did make the software; they are profiting from this. They make what 1.5 billion hand over fist each quarter off of our backs. At the same time, everybody else is in this industry is profiting from this. It's not just construction management companies that profit when we do the work that they used to do. It's not just the trades that profit when we do the work that they used to do, running the schedules, doing the quantities, all of these kinds of things. And it's not just the real estate agents who can now sell like hyper metricified, maximized, optimized floor plans that are as generic as possible, that are enjoying the fallout from us having to adopt such generic tools. They're all in agreement that our process is working for them, but this process is not working for us. And I think that's my biggest gripe with it. And architects are not to blame. Autodesk is definitely to blame. But at the same time, you have to look at the rest of the industry for just throwing us under the bus.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not the first time either. Like,
Yeah.
architecture fees are amongst the lowest in the construction industry. Like, they used to
Yeah.
be some of the highest, and now they're some of the lowest. Like, how does the literal designer of the building make less than the person who built it, sort of thing? Like, it doesn't make logical sense, but because we have been, at least here in the UK, it might be different elsewhere, but I know it's not in the US, of like, because we are seen as like this really elite profession where we aren't in actual reality, what it ends up stemming to is unions don't happen. So we don't have a
Right.
collective voice to fight against this stuff.
Right.
Which just meant over the years, because people in the construction industry obviously understand they're just the arts guys. They don't do this shit. Sort of thing. They can essentially push our wages and salaries down and the fees that we can collect down as well, at the same time as making us do more and more work on this side of things with Autodesk and increasing our overhead costs via Revit as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, they profit off of it. But like you said, design is undervalued, and this is the same thing that makes people think that AI could ever be, something in the creative industries, is that design is undervalued. And I think in popular media, for instance, your average person's perspective of a designer is somebody who, I don't know, is somehow worth six figures, goes to Starbucks with their MacBook and just makes some dumb little thing in Photoshop and like sends it off to the client and makes so much money. This is not true.
Wouldn't it be nice though?
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Should have worked in marketing. That's what they do.
The amount of times like either I've went on a date or like spoken to like new friends or family members, and it's mentioned like, oh, I'm an architect, and they're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
you must be like loaded. It's like, no, like the lowest level architect in the UK only just got a pay rise this year. They haven't for the last 14 years. The only reason they got it was because we put the minimum wage up.
Yeah, we don't make shit, and
Like,
there is
we are
no.
on the bare minimum.
Yeah, there's no. Honestly, I think it's because I've thought about this recently. There's no representation of us in popular media. If you think about like, when was the last time you saw a piece of media with an architect in it? There's that
Art
movie
Vandelay.
coming out. What? Who?
Art Vandelay.
Who's that?
George Costanza from Seinfeld.
Okay, yeah,
I
that's
have
a good
three.
representation.
So I have three. One of them is incredibly bad. Two of them one of them's cringy and the other's fine. So How I Met Your Mother, Ted
I knew you were going to say
is an
it. Someone was going to
architect.
say it. Yeah, he doesn't do any work. He doesn't do any work.
Do any work. The only time you ever see him do an architecture project, he's made a skyscraper that has balls, so it looks like a dick.
But it's funny because
And doesn't he just draw with his hands?
he draws on a drafting table.
Yeah, he draws in a drafting table, which even back then they weren't doing anymore.
2011, no one was doing that.
So, not great representation. I believe it's Your Name. The anime Your Name has a kid who wants to be an architect, so is looking to go to university to study architecture, and he has a bunch of sketches of buildings he's done. So, pretty.
Oh, he's gonna do architecture in Japan.
Yeah, right.
Good luck.
Yeah. So, I think that's a pretty cool representation of what quite a few architects are like before they start studying.
Yeah.
The other's Fountainhead.
Yeah.
Which is
honestly,
pretty
like,
bad.
I know a lot of architects who actually like that book, even if they don't like anything else Ayn Rand has ever written. And I think that I don't think you should like that book. It sets the wrong precedent for what an architect is.
Yeah, it does.
But this goes into the popular notion of architect, and like that's and I'm sure with this annoying Francis Ford Coppola movie that's coming out, the main character of which is an architect. Kylo Ren is playing an architect in Manhattan.
No.
This is going to go so well. And he's going to be super obnoxious. And it's going to be just like, Megalopolis. And I'm really it's really Ayn Randy even. He's got this like special material that he can make any building out of. Like, Reardon steel from Atlas Shrugged. And I know it's going to turn into the same kind of like stereotype of architects that somehow we're this like savant genius who's super well paid, who's like controlling the whole world's turning with the flick of a pencil line.
I will say that they do have a mistake in the movie I've spotted already. He's wearing a white shirt.
I wear white.
You can tell me you don't purely wear black.
No, I'm the only architect I know that doesn't wear black.
Me in my
because all
full
you
black
people wear
outfit.
black.
I hate
That's
this movie
the
already.
two things we need in representation for architects: sleeplessness and abuse in the workplace, and 2,
We wear black.
wearing black constantly.
Oh, it's very funny. I hate this movie already.
I really hate it, but I really need to see it because you know how it's gonna go.
It's 100% gonna play into exactly what you're thinking of playing up the like Starkitect's narrative essentially.
We need to have to have like a cringe-o-meter, like in the bottom corner while we watch this movie.
Oh,
We should do a viewing.
yes, we need a reaction episode.
Yes.
Let's do a viewing. Let's do a reaction episode of. We have to. It's about an architect. We have to.
Exactly.
We have to touch on it. It's like necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, so for all the listeners out there who are still sticking with us, expect a Megalopolis reaction episode sometime in the future.
Oh god, I'm looking. The fact that the promo photos for this movie is like him standing on the top of a skyscraper, like leaning over the edge. It's
I'm
just
so
like,
mad.
I hate this movie.
He's
already.
literally Howard Rourke. He's literally Howard Rourke.
He's on the Chrysler in this, right? I think that's the Chrysler, actually.
It
Yeah,
might
the
be
Chrysler's in
Chrysler,
it.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it. I think it.
I don't know.
I think it also stems for the fact that in past generations, architects were the master builder. Like
Yeah.
they did have to do everything, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's carried forwards as jobs have compartmentalized and separated out to the point where being able to even do detailing now can be essentially its own separate entire career.
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
an
I mean,
architect.
we used to be not to say that this is a good thing, but like in terms of the way that it's progressed, we used to be next to godhood.
Yeah.
So, Imhotep was practically second to the pharaoh.
Yeah, so it makes sense that that understanding of architecture has continued on because there hasn't been anything in media to discredit and misrepresent and change this, which isn't helped by the fact that Starkitects exists as well. So you're still getting
Right.
to modern day and still having these like god level architects creating these things. So like Norman Foster, Jacques Engels, Patrick, fuck you. So
I
we're
haven't talked about Patrick in this episode.
yeah, that's fine. I did.
No, but I think now we have facade designers, right? Where people are just
Yeah.
Yeah.
designing facades and creating the details to support the design of the facade. And it's like, wait, like this is a relatively new sector of the profession. Like the architect was the facade designer amongst all the other
Yeah.
bullshit that we have to do. So now it's like our roles are being partitioned every which way possible now. And but
I mean, the building industry is a huge industry.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it makes sense that it would become hyper specialized, where you wouldn't have a master architect doing the entire like Gesamtkunstwerk of a skyscraper, right? It makes sense that you have to partition this into separate things, and as such, the architect, it's still the same argument. The architect shouldn't have as much responsibility as the construction manager in a hyper specialized environment.
I think the other thing as well is, as architects, we're also, at least at training stages, we're also failing to specialize. So,
Yeah.
like, the fact that my license allows me to do any building I want, a little weird. Why can I do a hospital one day and then turn around and do a house? And then turn around and do, like, a skyscraper? Like, none of those things have the same properties. At the end of the day, we should be wanting to try and specialize a little bit more as architects, but we don't, sort of thing. Cause
my
at this point
career
it's-
path in the past 2 years has gone from luxury wellness resort to pumping station to largest airport in the world.
Yeah.
But I think that you can trace this issue back to school, because I know
Yeah.
so many people from my undergraduate who have transitioned to the construction side of the profession, right? They're not even in architecture. They're not doing shit in a studio now. But then like there are people who just like, I don't want to design things. I want to be a project manager. So why are we not facilitating that for them in a way where it's like, there are those people who are going to want to design stuff. There are going to be those people who just want to detail. There are going to be those people who want to project manage this whole thing. And I think fundamentally the profession is very antiquated in kind of keeping up with how a lot of other professions around us are evolving and adapting to younger generations and new technologies, but we're still, at the end of the day, we're still providing a PDF.
Yeah.
It's still the same.
Yeah.
We really overfucked this PDF. We way overthought how this fucking PDF is created.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it's true.
Yeah. Should we wrap it up for the day, guys?
yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, I think in conclusion, what Swan says is, I think, very the swan song of the episode, if you will.
Perfect.
is leading to a really apt point that we need to make sure that there's enough space for design, and not everybody needs to be a designer, but it's important for us as designers to stand up for ourselves and not let the people who don't want to be designers, which is fine, take away the limited agency that we have in this project. And I mean, Autodesk is not your friends. These software companies are going to juice us for everything that we're worth, and they're not going to give us the space to grab a hold and express ourselves as designers, as it were. And we have to push back against it. So, yeah, get loud about it and complain about it, and push back if you have to use this software, if you have to sacrifice your nights and weekends and evenings for this software.
Yeah.
It's not right.
And if you have a problem with Revit, pretty sure you can Google for an answer that was posted on a random forum that's about 13 years old and hasn't been updated since, because that's how every Problem is solved.
They'll still find that the
With this
result is still going to work because they haven't updated
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Or it has changed, but it's an entirely different thing that's going on.
Yeah, you know what? When you have a problem and it crashes, just write "fuck you" in the error report and send it.
Update your shit, please.
All right, guys. Cool.
This
Well,
was
thanks
fun.
for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
See you. Thank you.
Architecture could be an instrument of freedom and it could be an instrument of repression. And if you feel that this is pre-given, you've given up on the fight, we're lost.